Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager at THECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Hello, everybody. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network, where our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host or the station. Folks, you're going to want to listen to this podcast. Are you a fan of Leonard Cohen? Did you like his music? Do you wonder what it was like to be on the Greek island of Hydra? And you're going to want to listen to my guest, who was on the Greek island of Hydra and who was very friendly and lived with Leonard Cohen and Marianne, or lived close to them. My guest today is Judy Scott, who is the author of Leonard, Marianne, and Me, Magical Summers on Hydra. The cover is just beautiful. Judy Scott, originally born and raised in New Jersey. Yay for us Jersey girls. Now lives in Los Angeles with her spouse, Monica. Scott worked for many years at the highest levels of the independent film production and distribution business while raising her daughter, Tori. The project she was associated with garnered numerous awards, and in 2005, Scott helped launch the first ever LGBT cable TV network as a senior acquisitions and business affairs executive. She returns to Hydra often. Welcome, my fellow Jersey girl, Judy Scott.
Thank you very much. Good morning from Los Angeles.
You're welcome. Good afternoon from New Jersey. I'm so thrilled to have another Jersey girl on. And They say you could, take the girl out of New Jersey, but you can't take New Jersey out of the girl.
Without a doubt. I went to a football game last Sunday, a week ago Sunday. It was a local team, the Chargers and the Giants, and there were a lot of Giants fans there. I was one of them.
Oh, that's great. I just love the cover of your book,
Thank
Judy.
you.
It makes me want to go to Hydra, which in Greece they pronounce it Hydra,
yes.
Which is interesting. And I'd like for you to tell the audience, you lived quite a, I want to say colorful, but very exciting life. When you write about, in your book, Hydra is one of the characters, the island, and it reminds me of throwback to Greenwich Village in the 60s, very much artistic, music, and so please tell us why you wrote the book.
Well, I wrote the book originally based on my memoirs and journals that I kept back in the early 70s when I was there. I was approached by another fellow expat from Hydra who teaches at Harvard University named Kevin McGrath. He was putting together a compilation of a whole bunch of people that we knew, artists, writers, and hangers-on. And he asked me if I would contribute. He knew about my memoirs, and I told him that I would consider it. But first, I would go and get Leonard Cohen's permission. The only thing that Leonard asked me when we hung out together fairly closely for a whole summer was, please don't write about us. because he knew that I was there to do some writing. And I said, okay, I promise you I won't. And so I contacted him, and I've always had his email, and I've always been in loose contact with him. And I said, many years ago, 40 years ago, when, we hung out together, you asked me one thing, please don't write about us, and I never have. But now I've been approached by some people who are putting together a compilation, and I would seek your permission to join with them. I sent him my memoir as an attachment. At that point, it was about 90 pages long. And the very next day, I got an email back from him, which was just so edifying. It said, "Dear Judy, thank you for sharing this very fine piece of work for which I have no objections whatsoever. It was touching to read about all our old friends and all of the good times that we had back then." And I was just like, well, this is great, and they only wanted to use 30 pages. I sent him 90 pages, and I had a lot more material that I knew I could add to it. And so I thought, maybe I'll just do something on my own. And so I declined joining them. They did a self-published book called Idra Stories, and I was fortunate to get an agent, a lit agent, who was familiar with Idra and also with Leonard Cohen. And we extended it. I worked with 2 different editors. It took about another 2 years to get about 260 pages together. And we were really lucky to find a publisher who loved Leonard Cohen, also was a Buddhist, because Leonard spent a lot of time in the Buddhist monastery here on Mount Baldy, and got a contract and got a publisher, and it went out July 1st. And I had nothing to do with the cover. It's beautiful, and I love it. But they actually hired a design firm to do it. So if you want to get an interest in anything that Idra gives you, that cover really kind of says it all.
Yes, I agree. It looks absolutely beautiful. You were originally going to go to Istanbul, and you went to Hydra. What a twist of fate, how things happen. And you met, Marianne and Leonard. How did that happen? That's so exciting.
It's really funny because I didn't want to go to Idra. I was traveling with a bunch of kids. It was, youth hostels and hitchhiking times back then. And we were staying at a youth hostel on Corfu, which is another very beautiful Greek island. And we traveled to Athens together with the intention of going on to Istanbul. Back in those days, it was not recommended for single American women to travel on their own to Istanbul. It could be a little intimidating. And so we were all going to go together, but one of the guys that I was traveling with said, let's just go to one more Greek island because we've only seen one. And I said, okay, but let's try and find one close because I don't want to do another overnight ferry ride. And so we went off to the Greek travel office, and the clerk there said, this is the perfect one for you. It's only 3 hours by ferry. Back in those days, they didn't have hydrofoils. It's much quicker to get there now. And it has no cars, and it's the only inhabited Greek island that does not have any automated transportation whatsoever. So we said, great, and we got on the ferry. There's a picture of me in the book. By the way, there's 55 photos in the book, almost all of them owned by me, and a couple of them were licensed from friends of mine, including pictures of Leonard that never have been seen before, and of Mariana that have never been seen before. And a lot of the island and the island are close associated friends, mutual friends. Anyway, we got to Idra, and my friend said, okay, let's book for 4 nights. And I said, you know what, let's just book for 3 because we can always stay that 4th night. It's early May. It's not crowded. And so I arranged to only book for 3 nights. I ran into the man the book is dedicated to, George Lialios. He's passed on. Very close friend of Leonard Cohen's, very close friend of Mariana's. And he invited me to join his party and go up to his house and have some wine and watch the sunset. And it was while I was there that I actually met Mariana. She came to use George's phone because she didn't have a phone. There were very few phones on the island in those days. And we chatted, and she said, come and visit me at my house. And she said, I lived with a singer-songwriter for many years. Maybe you would recognize him, Leonard Cohen. And I just about fell over. I mean, he was one of my absolute favorites. I had all of his albums, and I loved singing his songs. And she said, come and visit me. And I said, well, I think I'm leaving tomorrow. And she just kind of looked me up and down, and she said, don't leave. This is a really magical place, and I think you belong here. And that was it. I mean, concurrently, George Lialios offered me a room in his house. He had a 17-room mansion, beautiful, beautiful mansion that had belonged to a sea captain. And he offered me a place to stay for free, and so I spent the whole summer.
Wow, you couldn't. Wow, that's like you can't even plan that. That's just
no
karma. I just you want to call it for that to have happened that way.
Yeah, it was pure serendipity. I told my friends down at the little pension, I'm not going on to Istanbul. And after I got the memoir completely finished, I wanted to call it. My agent didn't like this, but I wanted to call it "I Never Made It to Istanbul." And I still haven't. I've never been there. But, after about 2 weeks of my being there, hanging out with Mariana, Leonard, she got word, Leonard's coming. And I was like, okay, great. Then I can't possibly leave now. I get to meet my hero, my musical, inspiration. And he came. He spent a month, and I went to that house virtually every day. I actually only stayed overnight in it 2 nights. One, a raucous night that Leonard and his very best friend, Anthony Kingsmill, and I spent drinking and eating and singing till about 3 o'clock in the morning. So I spent the night there. And then the very last night before I left, I also spent, we had dinner, Leonard and Mariana and I spent the night there. But yeah, it was incredible. It was a real life-changing, transformational kind of experience with this musical master who really seemed like enjoyed talking to me and singing with me, and that still remains a very, very singular and important recollection, I guess you could say.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I can't even imagine meeting one of my favorite artists and staying, with them. That's like mind-boggling. I don't even know if I'd be able to talk.
Well,
I would be starstruck.
It did almost come to that because although I was almost immediately comfortable with Leonard, he was just so open and kind and friendly, and just really seemed to enjoy the hours that we spent together each day. He would work every day from very early in the morning until about noontime, and then take off, and we would go to the rocks swimming. There are no sand beaches on Hydra, but there's beautiful, beautiful platforms and rocks that you can dive off of. They have ladders built into them so that you can climb back into onto the platforms. And we would go and swim every day and then come back, and it was siesta time between, I would say between 3 and 6, you just rested and were quiet. And that's when I would go into his studio and sing with him and talk to him. And it really was incredible. And at one point, Leonard said, Judy, you sing about as good as any backup singer that I've ever used. If you want, I can introduce you to Clive Davis. Now, there's where oh my God, I don't think I could do that. I think I would, as you said, just freeze. So I said, well, thank you, Leonard, but I think I have to make it on my own. And to this day, I kind of think, wow, what would have happened if I said, oh, that would be wonderful. I would love to audition for Clive Davis. But in all honesty, like you said, I think I would have just been mute and embarrassed, and so it never happened.
Wow. Think of the possibilities of what might have happened there, but this is what you were meant to do. Always feel that way.
Yes, no, I do too. I mean, I'm happy with my life. My life has been very interesting. Working in the film business was very interesting. Meeting, several actors that I became friends with, like Patrick Swayze and his wife Lisa Niemi, and hanging out with them. Everything cumulatively to this day is what I believe I was meant to do, and I'm very happy with the way it turned out, especially that I got to write the book and that it got to be published.
Yes, and I do love the pictures in your book. Thank you for mentioning that, because they are, I love vintage photos, and I just really enjoyed looking at the pictures. What is your favorite song? If you have a favorite song, I know it's probably very hard to just narrow it down to one song of Leonard Cohen's.
Yeah, you're right, because there are so many wonderful songs and in so many different genres or styles. Some very upbeat, some very angry, and some very melancholy, and some I think joyful, like Hallelujah. But I think my favorite, and I've been asked that before, is a lesser known one of his called "The Window." And I just like to quote the chorus because it's just so beautiful. It goes, "Oh, frozen love, oh, chosen love, oh, tangle of matter and ghost, oh, darling of angels, demons, and saints, and the whole broken-hearted hosts, gentle this soul." And that just it grabbed me. It's just so poetic, and the music behind it is absolutely gorgeous. So I would say that probably The Window. Also, I actually kind of think I knew The Window, so that made it very personal.
That's beautiful. I'm going to have to look that up on YouTube again. I believe I did listen to it, but it was a while back. But now I have an incentive to go listen to it again. Judy, what would you like the reader to take away from your book about your experiences over there in Hydra?
Well, I'd like them to enjoy it, first of all. I think it's a good story. I think, it's been edited and condensed and enhanced, and it's just a really good travel story, transformational story. It does have information about Leonard and Marianne that is not commonly known, just the way they were together in day-to-day life, and that they invited me to join. And also that it was the last time ever that they were together in that house on Hydra, staying in the same house, the same room, the same bed. After Leonard left that time in 1973, his other main relationship with Suzanne, who's the mother of his two children, Adam and Lorca, was already an ongoing thing for him. Suzanne lived in his house in Montreal, and Adam was 2 years old. So we all knew that this was kind of the end, kind of the culmination of all of his associations, all of his romance with Marianne. And so being witness to that was really, really special. And I'd like people to know about that part of him. I'll tell you that I did have a meeting with his attorney and the executor of his estate, a man named Robert Corey, and the family had got a hold of my manuscript, unauthorized, but be that as it may, and they had a couple of requests, Lorca and Adam, for things that they would like removed. So I met with Robert Corey, and prior to meeting with him, I said, well, would you read the manuscript before we meet with each other so that I know, we know what we're talking about and it's the same thing? And he said yes, and I met with him at a restaurant in Culver City, Akasha, and I said, what did you think? And he said, I'm in a very particular situation here because I'm not too worried about someone's reputation for the next 20 or 30 years. I'm really worried about Leonard Cohen's legacy for the next 100 or 200 years because I think he's an absolute genius, an equivalent to T.S. Eliot or Pound or any of the poets of the past. And he said, your memoir gave me insight into Leonard Cohen long before I met him. I didn't meet him until he was in his 60s. And you've depicted the man when he was 38, and I think you did a really wonderful job. And I'd like to include your book in the papers that they were putting together at the University of Toronto. And I was like, wow, that really isn't what I was expecting our conversation to involve. But I was absolutely tickled and really so pleased that he liked what I wrote and that he did think it was a very good depiction of who Leonard Cohen, the man, not the public figure, not the incredible musician, but the actual personality was when he was 38 years old.
What an honor. You must have felt so honored.
I mean, to be included in his archive, in his musical archive at the University of Toronto was, an unexpected gift, just as Leonard was an unexpected gift, and just as, having the book published was something I never anticipated. And it is also a very good travelogue about a time and place in the early 70s. I mean, that was really I would say the creative, just the most creative time. There were a lot of artists there. Bryce Marden is considered one of the living artistic masters by the New York Times Magazine. He has 3 houses there. There are other painters. I was just there in October again. There are other artists there who are fairly well renowned, especially in Europe, and writers. And so it does depict, and a number of my friends on Hydra who've read the book said you really were able to articulate the atmosphere that we all lived in. And it's a very small island, and there's only about 200 or 300 people in the expat community. So it was very enlivening, and I think people would be interested in, just as they are in, Haight-Ashbury and what that was like, and Greenwich Village and what that was like in the late 50s, early 60s. I know I wrote Hydra in the 70s was, the zenith and just the place to be.
That sounds, the way you depict it and write about it, it just sounds so awesome. I wish I could go on a plane and hop right over there. I really do. What did Leonard Cohen teach you? If you had to pick one topic, what would you say?
I think what he taught me was to believe in myself. I think that he taught me in a certain way to even be more accepting of myself. I was just emerging as a gay woman. I had relationships with both men and women at that time. And on Hydra, and especially with Marianne and Leonard, it was just acceptable. I mean, you just were accepted for yourself. And it was something that I really had never felt being a Catholic schoolgirl from New Jersey, never felt before. But when these kind of incredibly creative and impressive people just embraced me and, just whoever I was fine with them, really gave me a sense of self-confidence and self-acceptance that I hadn't had before.
That is so important. And, people who listen to this show, we have a lot of millennials, so it's hard for people to understand that back in 1973,
yes,
to come out as gay or lesbian at that time was really very brave, very courageous, and could have put an end to somebody's career.
Absolutely.
And this is how it was back then, because I'm 64. So back in the 70s, when I was growing up, we didn't discuss, what
right.
someone's sexual orientation was. You kind of knew, but you didn't ask, and you just didn't talk about it.
Right.
I found out, and this had to be late 60s, early 70s, my mom had a cousin who came out to his family, and they kicked him out.
Yeah, that was
they just
very
owned
typical.
him. Yes. And, I say you are very courageous, Judy Scott, for, being able to, discuss it with them. And, people, I think, in Europe were ahead of the U.S., more accepting.
Yes.
And I just think that you were very courageous, to go over there. And, it is great to be accepted for who you are and for people to see something in us that we don't see in ourselves.
Right, exactly.
And that is very uplifting. I had that experience myself with people seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I just think that your story, your book is just absolutely fascinating. It's a beautiful story. You stayed in touch with Leonard Cohen and Marianne. I thought it was Marianne. Marianne.
Right until the very end, yes, Marianne.
And what did Marianne teach you? Was it a different relationship, I would assume?
Well, it was a very different relationship. I mean, I was crazy about her, and she returned emotionally, at the very least. She returned that love, and we stayed in touch. The kind of interesting thing for me, the really delightful thing for me, is that I received permission from her executor, from her estate, to publish all her letters. And they very kindly returned to me all of my letters to her. Marianne kept everything. She had very wide correspondence over many, many years with many people that she loved or cared about or became involved with, both men and women. And so the entire correspondence, it's probably about 25 letters back and forth, are in the book, because I got my letters back, and it was really interesting for me in my 70s now. Anyway, to read the letters that I wrote to her when I was in my mid-20s. I mean, it was interesting to see who I was back then and who she thought of me, and it was just, I did visit her in Oslo in 1975 when I went back to live on Hydra for a much longer period of time, 6 months, and I spent a lot of time. I visited her and stayed with her for 2 weeks, and Axel, her young son, who tragically has serious mental illness and has had it for quite some time, but he was fine then, and we just had a wonderful stay. And seeing her letters to me, so loving, and saying, I wish I didn't have to write to you. I wish you were here. I'd like to see you and be with you, was just so edifying. It was just so wonderful to revisit those memories. I last saw her in 2013 on Hydra, and we spent a day together. We had a great time, and the last time I said goodbye to her, my partner was with me, of course, and her second husband, Jan, was with her, and we parted in the harbor. We were getting on the hydrofoil, and I just gave her a hug, and I whispered in her ear, "I have always loved you," and she just hugged me and gave me this. She had this kind of bittersweet, sad smile, and said, "I know." So those are just really tender and special moments, I think, in your life, and I'm so happy that I was able to share those in the book with the world. And by the way, because the 70s were definitely the sex, drugs, and rock and roll period, there's a little bit of that in my book as well.
Yes, that definitely was. That for sure. Here in New Jersey, they just legalized marijuana, but there's no stores, to get it. They have medical marijuana. And I said to my coworker at the time, because I had looked into medical marijuana, and it's so expensive. And so I said to my coworker, no $5 bags like back in the 70s.
That is very true. It's been legal here for a long time, but it is really quite expensive. And now I just buy it to ease my aching back.
Yeah, and and when I was told a young person, because she obviously told me she was into that, and I said, well, back in the 70s, you could get a sandwich bag full for $5. She says, you know how much that would be now?
Couple hundred.
Yeah, I looked at me like, hey, I was young once. Not that I brought it, my sister did, but I was young once, and it is amazing when you do go back into your letters and the memories of how you were back in your 20s. Of course, you're different now in your 70s, and you wonder, probably the same thing I do, where did my life go? How did I get here?
For sure. Yes.
Yes.
I have to keep taking out my passport going, oh, yeah, I was born in 1946. It's hard to believe. And the days go by really quick.
Yes. And the older you get, I feel the faster the time goes.
Yes, and I do have my daughter, Tori. Her name is Victoria. She was actually started on Hydra. I became pregnant while living with Tori's father, another American that I met in Athens and invited to come out. I was still, completely bisexual at that point, and James, her father, came out and stayed a month with me. I had rented a house on Hydra from a lovely man I'm still friends with named Lindsay Calicott, who's also included in the book, some of his memoirs. He had quite a life too. But anyway, while James was staying with me, I became pregnant, and so Hydra didn't just give me, Leonard and Marianne and all the wonderful people that I knew there, some of whom I'm still close to, but it gave me my daughter, which is really wonderful, and she's been back with me several times. I think the last time she was there was her 21st birthday. We took her for her 21st birthday, and now I have 2 grandchildren. So life does go on. It does seem to go really quick, but there's still stuff to live for and to look forward to, which is wonderful.
Absolutely. I just turned 64 this month, and I'm thinking, 70 is looking really young to me at this point. 70 is not old anymore.
That is absolutely
like I thought.
True, I promise.
Like when I was a teenager.
The less you have to think about it, the easier it is. I just don't even think about it. Everyone always says to me, geez, Judy, you don't look 75. I was like, that is the good news.
Yes.
You stay young at heart.
Yes, definitely, and I'm definitely young at heart. Judy Scott, thank you so much for coming on, chatting with
My
Betsy
pleasure.
today. I'm so honored. Can you tell the audience where to purchase your book, Leonard, Marianne, and Me, Magical Summers of Hydra?
It's in 67 Barnes & Noble stores, and it's available at barnesandnoble.com. Of course, it's available at amazon.com. It's available in most of the Amazon sites worldwide, so amazon.co.uk, .co.fr for France, .co.de for Germany, Australia, New Zealand. It's only available right now in English. We are working on a Spanish translation in Mexico City, but right now it is available on all the Amazon sites worldwide. And it's also available at Target.com in the States and at Walmart.com in the States.
Wow, that's out there then, pretty, out there. And you also got great reviews on Amazon, I must add, and I understand why. Folks, I want to encourage everyone to purchase this book, Marianne and Me, Magical Summers on Hydra by Judy Scott. You need to get this book. You're welcome, especially if you were a Leonard Cohen fan. And if you're not, you know what? Look Leonard Cohen up on YouTube, and then I bet you'll be excited to get the book, because that's what happens. You become a fan. You read about a person. To be honest with you, I knew who Leonard Cohen was. I heard of him. I heard his music, but I hadn't listened to it, lately. But in reading your book, I started to listen to his music. So, you read a book, you become a fan, you want to listen to the music, or you know about the music, but you don't know about the book.
Right.
So
right.
There you have it, folks.
For younger people and film fans, I mean, his music is in Natural Born Killers. Quite a lot of his music is in Natural Born Killers, and also in the what was the other film? I'm sorry, can't remember it. But that's
okay.
What happens. That's what happens.
I understand. Yes, I have heard his music in movies now that you mention it, but I couldn't tell you which ones myself.
Yeah, he's used quite a lot, and in TV series too, especially Hallelujah. And in a certain sense, I know even he thought that it was overused. It's been covered by over 200 singers and musicians.
Wow.
It works so well in so many different places that he's still, in fact, believe it or not, he's more popular now than when he died. And
that happens a lot, that someone becomes more popular once they have passed away.
Yes,
I have heard of that. Well, I want to thank you again, Judy Scott, for sharing your story and writing your book, which I think will help other people.
I hope so. And Betsy, thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're
really
welcome.
Appreciate it, and wish everybody happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, all the rest.
Thank you. It's nice to help out another Jersey gal. I enjoy talking to you. And you grew up not too far from me.
No, I'm going to be back
really?
there next month visiting it's my mother's 97th birthday, and I will be in Lakewood, New Jersey, and Bricktown, New Jersey for about a week.
Oh, Lakewood. My mom lives right by there. My mom lives in Manchester. I'm up in the Woodbridge area. But you grew up in New Brunswick.
I grew
around
up,
New Brunswick.
Well, I went to high school in New Brunswick. I actually lived in Edison.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I live in Islin.
There you go.
Oh, my goodness. Isn't that something, folks? It's a small world.
It really is.
And Edison, wow. Yeah, I worked in Edison. So Edison is big, but I'm very close to Edison. So that actually Islin borders Edison.
Yes.
So that is a small world. Yes. Small world, I'll tell you. Thank you, and best wishes to you. I hope your book sells and that people buy it and enjoy reading it, become Leonard Cohen fans.
I hope so.
You know, it's very rich in his music. I could just put it this way: it's very rich.
Yes.
And his lyrics are just amazing.
Yes.
It's the only way I can put it.
Special.
Yes. Folks, please share this podcast to help other people. And if you missed any of this podcast, you can hear it all over again on your favorite podcast outlet. I am on Spreaker, Spotify, CastBox, name a few. It is free to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy. You'll never know who I will have on. I have all different kinds of guests and discussing different topics. You're not going to want to miss any of them. They are exceptional people that I have on my show, if I have to say so myself. I toot my own horn. They are. I have very, very exceptional guests, very informative, great resource, and I get educated every time by my guests. I sure do. And I wanted to thank Jeannie White, who is station manager for producing the show and writing the blog, and Lillian Caldwell, CEO, Passion World Talk Radio Network, to make this all possible. And I want to thank Judy Scott's publicist, Lisa Warren, president of her company, Lisa Warren.
Lisa Warren Associates, yes.
Associates, yes. Thank you. See, my mind almost went blank. Lisa Warren PR, there we go. Lisa's great. And if anyone's looking for a publicist, Lisa Warren gets the job done, I could tell you that.
She's and
she is a pleasure, an absolute pleasure to work with. And I'm not just saying that, it's true. So I just want to say that. And folks, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind. This won't be posted till sometime in January, but I hope you have if you can't have a happy new year, I hope you have a peaceful one and a blessed one. And until we chat again, yes, yes, your words to God's ears, yes. Till we chat again, please be kind. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Bye-bye now.
Are you looking for an internet talk radio station for your podcast? Look no further. At the helm of Passionate World Talk Radio are two women that want to provide a spot for you and your podcast to be heard. There are many other places for your podcast, but PWTR has the audience. You will not be disappointed. Our station has been on the internet for the past 16 years. Call us for more information. 484-364-1032 or text Jeannie White, station manager at THECONNECTSHOW@gmail.com for podcast show details. Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.